Hi, everybody. This is Lena Savkar. I'm Director of DHS Leader Development, Leader Effectiveness, lots of things with the word leader in them, and I am super excited to welcome you to our cafe today. This is our last cafe for the year, for the fiscal year, I should say, and what a year it's been. If you've been with us for any of our previous cafes, you know that these are incredibly rich and, I think, meaningful discussions that and presentations that aim to provide some, food for thought. Get it? Cafe, food for thought. I thought it was cute. But in any case, hope that you have come to the table today with some time to think and reflect, and want to congratulate you on actually taking the time and making the time to invest in your leadership effectiveness. We love doing these, and I got to tell you, this is particularly timely, this topic, performance, right? For many of us, not all of us, but for many of us, this is the end of the performance year, the beginning of the next performance year. I realize that's not the case for everybody, but regardless, it is the end of the fiscal year for all of us, and what a wild ride this fiscal year has been. I have no idea what comes next year. So I think it's a very timely opportunity to talk about something that, we are all focused on, because no matter what's going on around us, no matter what changes, no matter what uncertainties come, we know one thing for sure. DHS employs us to perform, and we're here to do exactly that. So I think this is a topic that is I think universal, and regardless of where we are in the process. So I'll tell you what, a couple things that I wanted to mention before I introduce our special guest star, and that is that if you've been to our cafes before, you know that we are recording this, and I apologize, I don't know about you, but I am seeing a lot of very interesting slides up on screen. I believe my webcam is gone, so I'm going to try starting it again. Hopefully you can hear me regardless. All right, I'm back. Hopefully you see me. In any case, we do record these events. Okay, great. Thank you for the chat comments letting me know that I'm a visible person again. So we do record these because we know that not everyone can make the time to attend. We make them available in audio podcast format following the events on our leader development page. We hear that there are organizations that use them to spur discussions or for group, team meetings. And so by all means, if you know somebody who missed this and this is something that you think they'd enjoy, you'll be able to send them the podcast or direct them to it. The other thing I should let you know is that at the end, we try to leave time for questions, but I'll be honest, sometimes it just doesn't work out because there's so much that we want to get from our guest speaker. If the opportunity does arrive to ask questions, I will certainly let you know, and I will let you know at that time how you can ask questions. Now, the last question, well, I guess it's the first question that I have for you is, all of you, let me see a show of hands out there. How many of you know that all supervisors, managers, and executives have requirements for annual competency development under the Leader Development Program? Oh, wow, this warms my heart. This makes me so happy. So many of you know this. Good job. And for those of you who haven't raised your hands, I'm sure it's just because you're trying to find the right key, because obviously this is a requirement and I should say a responsibility that all seasoned leaders have to continue to make sure that we stay skilled and ready to anticipate how people and programs will get to progress. So loving seeing all those hands, and to that end, you may know that you can actually use attendance at this event to get credit for 1 hour of competency development. So please make sure you talk to your component leader development action officer about that. All right, well, without further ado, let me get started. Like I said, this is a very timely topic. It's what we do, right? It's what we do. It's what we're here for. We perform. And the interesting thing is that, organizations set goals around performance. We have milestones, we have templates, we have, benchmarks, we have to write it a certain way. And it's all because the organization brings us here in order to achieve goals together. And yet, as individuals, there is no one-size-fits-all, right? Every one of us comes to our performance opportunity with a completely different set of stories, with a completely different set of motivations and perspectives. And yet, we have to somehow marry our individuality with sort of a universal template. That's life. That's life in an organization. But the thing is that performance is really complex. And it's not about perfection, right? It's not about perfection in what's delivered. It's about the quality and effectiveness of how and why it's delivered. And so today, we are going to spend some time looking at how do you inspire performance, not only in others, but in yourself, that is individualized. How do you inspire and make meaningful performance, especially when things are crazy, time is slim, challenges are plenty? How do you stay inspired? And whether you're a supervisor or whether you're a leader in place, how do you similarly inspire others? How do we create a culture of where results are about more than ratings, and performance is personal, right? So to that end, I'm super excited to introduce our special guest star today, who is Martin Elam. And Martin is currently TSA's Executive Director for Medium Hubs in domestic aviation operations. But let me tell you about Martin. He has led, first of all, he's spent his career serving and leading, but he has led performance transformation through incredibly simple but very powerful steps in unarguably one of the most challenging places that you can do so, which is LAX Airport. If any of you have been to LAX or worked at LAX, I think you know what I'm talking about. This is not easy. And so to transform the culture of his workforce and inspire a greater sense of safety, engagement, and yes, performance, it takes someone very special, and that person is, in fact, Martin Elam. The question that we have for him today is, how do you do that? How do you how do you transform in the face of so many obstacles? And if you can do it, all of us can do it with sometimes easier circumstances. So today, through his example and his reflection, you are going to get an opportunity to learn about the simplest steps that you can take to transform and ensure that performance is not about the ratings, it's about the results. So to that end, Martin, hopefully you are there somewhere, and I would love to welcome you to our video screen stage.
Let's see, does that work?
Oh, there you are. Yes, I see you.
Perfect.
Welcome. Martin, I'm so excited that you could be here. I hear you're actually in Las Vegas today, and you've carved out the space to do this with us. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Lena.
Well, I know there's plenty of folks who are really looking forward to hearing from you. I think you are one of those leaders that many of us would like to grow up and be like. Not that I'm saying you're old, but just saying. I think what you've done, and more importantly, as we say, why you've done it, your performance speaks loudly about what you believe in for the people that work for and with you. So, again, welcome to the stage, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So let me start out with a question that I love to ask very accomplished executives. And that is, Martin, if your very first boss, whoever you consider that to be, right? Could be when you were, a lifeguard at the pool in high school, or whoever you consider to be your first boss. If your first boss could see you today, sitting here as my special guest star on this enormous and important topic, what would that boss have to say looking at you here today?
For me, Lena, I think I have to first sort of start by kind of defining that word boss. people have asked me this question before, and it makes me think about children when they say, to other people, "You're not the boss of me." There's sort of there's an inherent message in that sort of lets us know that we actually do get to control who we allow to be our bosses, right? And I think I wouldn't necessarily say the first people that I had that maybe were supervisors and managers for me, early when I first started working in fast food, things of that nature, because folks didn't really know how to lead. I didn't even want them to be my boss. They could bark orders and things, but they really weren't my boss. Probably the first real boss that I had was a guy by the name of Doug Ray. Doug was one of the first bosses I had with TSA, and sort of why I would say, I define him as a boss is that, he cared about me. Doug he took enough time to sort of become almost like a fatherly figure, a mentor type. He cared about me in a way that no one else in a position of leadership really had ever displayed to me. He taught me basic tenets of life, treating people with dignity and respect, things that I still live by to this day. He taught me, that people are our most valuable resource. And as a young man and a young person in my career, I needed all of that. I came from a community that was, I had a rough childhood, growing up in South Central Los Angeles. And when I got into the workplace, I carried with me some of that baggage, if you will. And he took the time to care about me and express an interest in me. So what would he say about me today? I think hopefully say he's proud of me, but more importantly, he'd probably just be happy that I listened to him because I was a little rough around the edges early in my career. And I think hopefully I've evolved as not only as a leader, but also as a person, just being a better person, a better human being, if you will.
First of all, thank you, and thanks for, that sort of philosophical perspective as well. And I love that story, and I can see in the comments that there's some other folks who know exactly who you're talking about and appreciate that story as well. So good to, I think we would agree. He would look at you and say, "You know what? Good job," and and I'm glad you listened to me as well. So speaking of listening, I got to tell you, there's a few words that we throw around all the time, terms, performance management, the importance of performance management, the importance of performance, high performing, everything to do, performance impact. And yet, we still think about performance as something that is rated versus something that is demonstrated, right? And the fact is, the real meaning of the word performance is, what are you doing? Not what did somebody else assess you because they're required to do. And so with that in mind, I want to invite you to give our leaders here today on this call, leaders at all levels, what would you want them to keep in mind as kind of a working definition, if you will, of performance?
That's a good question. I think, I tell people sometimes performance is sort of the how for me. And what do I mean by that? We think about, when we were kids, we learned, the 5 W's, the who, what, when, where, why. And then there's the how, right? So in work, I can control almost all of the 5 W's. I can control who, the what, the when, the where, the why. I get to determine where I deploy resources. I know what the what is, what our mission is. I can determine where people are going to be at a certain time of day. There's certain things that I can manage, right? But sometimes it's hard to manage the how. The how is sort of one of those things that comes from within. How our employees are going to carry themselves, how they're going to execute the mission, how they're going to perform their jobs, how they're going to treat each other, how they're going to treat the flying public. So I think the how for me is really one of those things that, I've got one of those things that says my computer needs to restart, so forgive me. Technology, you got to love it, right in the middle of a meeting here.
And the same thing.
But as I was saying, the performance side of it is the how. Am I going to be enthusiastic about the work that I do? Am I going to be energetic? Or am I just going to show up, kind of as they say, do my 8 and hit the gate? So performance to me it's the how. It's really the how you do your job. It's the choice that I think we make as individuals, not because, our boss says we have to do it, not because there's a standard operating procedure that says we have to do it a certain way, But we get to choose how we execute every single day. So when you think about your performance, when I think about my performance, I think about the choice that I make and how I carry out my duties every day.
You know, I thank you for that, because I think you're absolutely right, and that is it's how and what you bring to your performance. And I think you would agree there's a lot of why in there as well. What you bring to it, you know, carries a lot of why, or I should say it telegraphs the why. How you do it telegraphs your why, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, with that said, though, it one of the realities that supervisors encounter, and actually remember, all of us are employees of somebody, right? Somebody is all of our supervisors. So all of us are employees, and all of us are leaders, and all of us have supervisors. And, you know, one of the things that as a leader, whatever level you're leading at, but certainly as a supervisor, that you end up having to do is assessing the performance of others. It's what you have to do. And one of the things that I think, you know, no classroom teaches you well, that's what I think, is that fine line between how do you assess between sort of intention, how would you talk about or describe the role that intention plays in performance? Not just when intention leads to great performance, but when despite intentions, the performance itself didn't meet the mark or gets derailed or, you know, circumstances change or just didn't get the effort it needed. Can you talk a little bit about, like, the role of intention in performance?
You know, when you were asking that question, it made me think about. So my wife has worked in education for the last 23 years. She's an assistant principal at a middle school, and for many years, she always uses this phrase of, you know, is it attitude or aptitude? You know, and aptitude as a teacher, you can teach that, right? You can train someone in the world we live in the real world. I can train someone who lacks some aptitude, but when there's an attitude problem, that's oftentimes, you know, the difficult thing. Now, those are the things that we tend to deal with most as leaders. I kind of think of intention the same way, right? So if I've got a great employee with a great attitude who's coming in every day, giving it their all, but maybe we don't achieve necessarily the results that we're looking for, that's still going to be someone who I deem as a high performer. Why? Because maybe they didn't necessarily get the results. It's that attitude. It's that intention, right? This is someone who's coming in, giving it everything that they possibly can. This is a great opportunity for me to engage as a leader, to maybe give them some training, give them some help, give them some better tools to enable their success. On the other hand, we have people who are tremendously skilled but have bad intentions, right? They're not always aligned with our mission objectives, right? These are people who, you know, maybe they're great with the computer and they can develop the greatest reports and things, but they do just enough to get by. Right? They don't have the right attitude. Their intentions aren't always aligned. And they will look at you and say, well, I produced. You know, I did what I had to do. I did what I was supposed to do. But maybe they're not the best coworker. You know, they're not someone who really sort of is considered a team player. You know, they're not always producing the work environment, if we will, that we're seeking, not just the results, if you will, or the outputs that maybe we're looking for in employees. So I would say, you know, intention plays a huge factor. And frankly, I would take an employee with a good attitude over an employee with good aptitude any day, right? I believe in me as a leader. I believe in me in terms of I can train someone who's got the right attitude. I can train someone who's got the best intentions, and I can give them the skills, and I can enable their success. But if I've got someone who's tremendously skilled but has the wrong attitude or the wrong intentions, frankly, I don't want them on my team. I don't care how good they are.
Amen. I think you're getting a lot of resonance there in the chat as well. I think we all know that. And in fact, you know, being here on this call, our listening audience today, you know, is an indication of their why and their attitude and their intention. So again, you know, I think you speak the truth. You know, attitude and some of the things we were just talking about kind of naturally lend to talking about engagement and morale, right? Now, if you're like me, and I know I am, sometimes you are sick to death of hearing about engagement and morale and Lord knows the feds, right? Because sometimes it can feel like what we're talking about engagement and morale rather than increasing engagement and morale. And as I always say, action plans don't increase morale. Behaviors do, right? So with that said, however, let's be honest. Why do organizations even care about morale and engagement? Well, it's very simple, because the actual definition of engagement is when employees feel so invested in by the organization that they are willing to invest their discretionary effort back into the results. They identify with the organization. They are willing to give, obviously, more, better performance. And that's what organizations want. And so it's very simple, and so employees who are engaged, who carry high morale, are those that are likely to expend more in the service of their performance, and the results may show. On the contrary, disengaged employees are those who may withhold discretionary energy. In fact, they may even withhold the baseline energy, right? And their performance might be perfunctory or weak. They're unhappy, and they're going to create unhappy results to a large degree. So, organizations care about engagement because they care about results. However, there's a difference between why organizations care about engagement and why leaders care about engagement. Yes, leaders are part of an organization, but now we're taking the focus to actual leaders. And so, like I said, employees can tell. We can all tell when the engagement efforts are also perfunctory because the efforts are sort of made at us rather than about us. But on the other hand, we can also tell when a leader's investments in engagement and inspiration and a culture of high performance are sincere and transformative. And that brings me to how I first met you, which is I heard a tale about a guy out at LAX who had taken, like I said, an unarguably challenging workforce situation under very difficult conditions, taken those FES numbers or ratings at that time, which were showing signs of significant challenge and trouble, and through some of the simplest of steps had completely transformed the FES ratings. And it's not the FES ratings that interested me, it was the feeling that your workforce had. And so, Martin, could you tell us about sort of a leadership synopsis of what the situation was then, what you did and why you did it, and how was that, what was the outcome of that? This is the story everyone needs to hear.
So I would have to start by saying it wasn't just me, right? It's not a singular effort. You cannot transform an organization spread all across Southern California, over 3,500 people, single-handedly, right? And I'll tell you, it wasn't the most difficult or challenging job that I've ever had in my career. People say, how do you lead 3,000 people? I don't. I lead 5, right? I have 5 direct reports, my assistant directors, and my goal was to be a good example for them, to lead them effectively, to provide support and advocacy for them. And hopefully those behaviors would sort of permeate throughout the organization. I think I'd have to sort of paint the picture as to sort of when I got there, right? So I began my career actually with TSA at LAX in 2002. And through the encouragement of folks like Doug Ray, who encouraged me to, kind of make those sacrifices, and having a wonderful wife and a supportive family, I was able to move around a little bit. And I moved to Houston for 4 years. I moved to Chicago. Came back to Southern California, initially to Ontario, Palm Springs area. And then we had the most sort of tragic day in TSA's history on October 1st, 2013, when we lost Gerardo Hernandez. This was the TSO who was killed in the line of duty at LAX. And following that shooting, I was reassigned to LAX. And our agency's leaders, I think, saw things in me that maybe I didn't even see in myself. But I also think that they saw sort of the son of Los Angeles, if you will, returning back to try to help restore some of that trust and confidence that people had in leadership. And I think for me, when I came in, it was a little bit disappointing, right? You have a workforce that's a little bit depressed, kind of feeling they just lost one of their own, feeling maybe like they didn't have the support of their leaders. Maybe the environment wasn't as caring. There wasn't a lot of involvement. We had a lot of committees and things that were standing, but no one would show up. When you have 2,500 employees at LAX and you have an employee advisory council meeting and there's literally 3 people showing up. You also had sort of a lack of engagement at the management level, right? If I'm honest, even our mid-level managers and things had kind of accepted this kind of depressed environment that we were kind of operating in, and I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I took a very direct and engaged approach. I got involved with all of our committees. Literally, I joined the Employee Advisory Council, the Joint Awards Committee, Safety Action Team, our employee morale groups. We started a basketball league and a baseball league. I played in the leagues. I'm not an athlete, but I just wanted to be out there and show the workforce that at the end of the day, we're all human, right? Even as a member of these committees, I wasn't a voting member. I wasn't their leader, so to speak. I was just there. But I wanted to make sure that the leadership saw my support, right? So I wanted to see a full house. When we're going to have a meeting, we need 30, 40 people present. If we're going to have these committees, then we need to put stock and value into them. And by me sort of being that example for the management team, I started to see more of them wanting to get involved, right? We would put out solicitations for people to get engaged, and we'd have to turn people away because we had so many people wanting to come to sort of help and participate.
Wow, that's
the
great.
Other piece is we focused on visibility and communication. Myself, our then director, Keith Jeffries, who's still there today, we spent a lot of time doing town halls, encouraging our mid-level management to be more involved, just get out there and speak with people, establish relationships with people, take the time, get to know folks, spend the time, give them the opportunity to speak to their leaders and ask those tough questions and get unfiltered results or unfiltered responses that they didn't have to hear about after, going through 5, 6 different layers of people, but they could hear it sort of directly from the horse's mouth, as people would say. And then sort of that last piece, and this one is really an ode to my former boss, Keith Jeffries. He was kind of a genius with this, and he didn't come right out and sort of say it or teach it. It was one of those things that I kind of picked up on after a while. So Keith kind of had this reputation for passing out money and coins. And everybody would kind of, why is he doing this? He'd walk into a checkpoint, for example, and say, who can tell me our mission statement for $100? And everybody would kind of look around like, I don't know the mission statement. And he'd say, too bad. I had $100 for anybody who could tell me the mission statement. And he'd walk away. Well, what would happen then is everybody who was within earshot would immediately run to the break room or go to the website, wherever they have, and would read the mission statement and try their best to memorize it. And then he'd come back 2-3 days later, and they're running up to him. Sir, I know the mission statement. And they'd recite it, and then he'd give them $100. What he was doing, though, he didn't care about their memorization.
He actually handed them the cash.
Well, not cash. He would give them a on-the-spot award. So we'd fill out a Form 1140. Yeah, but they get an extra $100 in their paycheck on their next paycheck, right?
Wow.
But what I figured out was he was incentivizing engagement. What do I mean by that? He couldn't care less. I could care less about somebody's memorization skills, right? We're not testing your memorization skills. But if we don't understand our mission, how are we supposed to fully execute it, right? If we don't understand the vision of the organization and where we're headed as an organization, how are we supposed to get there? If we don't understand our strategic goals, because we never took the time to read the strategic plan to understand it, how are we supposed to accomplish them? So what he would do is by giving out this money and things, he was incentivizing engagement. So I learned from him, and I started doing the same thing. I'd go on a checkpoint. And I was more interested in, are people engaged, meaning are they giving that extra time that you talked about to learn and understand what's going on in our organization? So I might ask, hey, who can tell me 2 things from the newsletter that we published last week? Excuse me, the lights just went off. There they go. Again, technology being what it is, right? But I would ask, What's that?
You are so illuminating.
But I would ask them, what's in the newsletter, right? And they may not know it. Yeah. But, again, I'd walk away, and then they go read the newsletter. And now they have, they're invested, if you will, in understanding what's going on, and it started spreading like wildfire, right? They knew if they saw me or the FSD or others on our leadership team, we might quiz them. We might ask them a question about things. So that we were incentivizing them getting involved and becoming more engaged. And I might walk away and say, if you can tell me 3 things in the newsletter, I got $200 for you. I come back, 10 people have now read the newsletter, right? And I would give a couple awards out. And then I challenge them again. There's always sort of that next thing that you can challenge people to want to be better by. And it was the first time I ever saw someone use that awards budget that we all get, right? All of us as leaders were allocated something that we can utilize to recognize and award our people. But what we typically do is we wait until the end of the year, and we all kind of scramble at the last minute trying to figure out how we're going to give out these big, huge awards, when we could have been utilizing those funds throughout the year to create the environment and the culture, if you will, of engagement and interaction and people vested in caring about the success of the organization. So that's sort of some pointers, if you will, that I would throw out there. These are tricks that anyone can use, but really truly understanding that the opportunity you have as a leader to truly create the environment for people to thrive and engage and commit to something that they otherwise wouldn't do.
That's such, and I love that the examples that you're giving us, they are, when I say simple doesn't mean easy. Simple just means not complicated. And sometimes, it's like people talk about the soft skills. And I'm like, if they're so soft, why are they so hard for everyone to do, right? So simple is sometimes so overlooked. And you and Keith, I should say, you've got to, how do we make people pay attention to the fact that they're part of something larger than themselves by us paying attention to the fact that they're an individual? I see all of that in there. And, these are great examples. I see people in the chat, the whole notion of incentivizing engagement and morale. And I want to take that kind of a step further. And that is this, okay, granted, one of the things you did was around the $100, the coin, the $200, or putting something. Now, not everyone has that capability, and my screen just went dark as well. Not everyone has that capability, and certainly depending on what your leader level is, you certainly don't have those kinds of things available, but that doesn't mean your responsibility for inspiring others is any less. And so, let's talk about how simple it really can be. I want to share with you, a couple of very simple steps, and I want to see, what your thoughts are and see what your additions to that are. Like, what are the simplest of steps that you can take to create powerful results? And so, for instance, I promised you I would share mine with you, so I'll give you a few of mine. So I have a set of, simple leadership investments that cost nothing and can often mean everything. And so the first one is say please with specifics and mean it. And the reason for that is that by indicating that you are minding your manners, like we were all raised to do, with the people who work for you, the people you work for, the people who work with you, you are recognizing that you're asking something of another human being, and you're recognizing that their reality matters, their time and their effort matters. So say please with specifics and mean it. So my second one is, and you'll start to notice a pattern here, which is say thank you with specifics and mean it, right? Appreciation, gratitude, recognition not only mean that their effort matters, but that they are noticed. And, I could wax philosophical here, but one of the deepest human drives that we have, I don't care what your Myers-Briggs is, okay? I'll teach that all day long, but this isn't about whether you're gregarious or not. But we have a human drive to be known, right, to matter. And so by validating that, you are validating that another person matters. So say thank you with specifics and mean it. The third one, again, I'm sure you're getting a pattern here, which is say, I'm so sorry, with specifics and mean it. I'm so sorry for. I'm so sorry that. And by the way, you don't get to follow that up with, I'm so sorry that you took it that way. That's one of my big pet peeves. No. I'm so sorry that I hurt you. I'm so sorry that I didn't hear you. Or I'm so sorry that I missed it. Whatever it is. And mean it. When a person shows humility and empathy and accountability, they are building credibility, which is at the core of leadership, right? Leadership is credibility. Commit to transparency. People respect a leader who trusts them with the truth. Providing insight into why a decision was difficult. People will hear you say no if they feel heard, right? You and I have talked about this, and not only that, but if you are transparent with them, they know they can be transparent with you, and as a leader, that means you're never going to be blindsided by something that you should have seen coming but didn't because no one would tell you. And finally, one of the things that I'm big on is, we could probably replace every action plan with one simple question, which is every single day, ask one person, what mattered to you today? In their response, you will not only find out, what matters, what doesn't matter, what's working, what's not working, more so than all the, weekly reports you could ever read. So you had asked, and I promised you I would tell you what my super simple steps are. And now I want to know, what are your super simple steps to success for getting it right?
So first of all, the 5 that you just mentioned, I think, are all spot on, and you'll find that the 3 that I sort of live by, if you will, all kind of align well. They may not be the same things, but it's just because I'm an easy, simple-minded person, and I like to keep it simple. So I call them the 3 R's. And that is responsiveness, respect, and recognition. And what do I mean by that? One of the biggest failures, if you will, that we can demonstrate as leaders is the inability to respond. There's nothing worse than when a senior leader or any person in the organization that someone is seeking help from doesn't respond, right? People are self-sufficient for the most part, meaning we try to do all we can on our own when we can. When we're reaching out for help, we really need somebody to respond to us. And I think for me, as a leader, that is extremely important for me. It's a commitment that I've always made to my people. I will always respond within 24 hours. I even make outlandish commitments. I tell for example, my federal security directors that I'm privileged to support and advocate for and lead at headquarters. I tell them, if I don't respond to you within 24 hours, I owe you a steak dinner. And I literally, this is no joke, and this is not a prop. I'm going to show you, I keep $50 Ruth's Chris gift cards that I get from Costco in my wallet. And if I fall through on one of those commitments and I don't get back to somebody within 24 hours, I send them a steak dinner as an apology, right? It's important that we understand that as leaders, people are depending on us. Right? I didn't say I could necessarily solve your problem within 24 hours, but what I do promise is that I'll respond to you. And I'll do everything in my power to kick down doors, bust in windows, do whatever it takes to get an answer, and we'll continue to follow up until we have solutions for you. And I think we all should exercise that same level of commitment at all levels. If somebody reaches out to you because they need help, respond, number 1. Number 2, respect and dignity. Treat people with respect and dignity. That doesn't cost us a dime. All we have to do is just be polite. You mentioned saying thank you, saying please. That's all about respect and dignity. It costs us nothing to be pleasant, professional, polite, and treat people with the same dignity and respect that we're seeking. The last one is recognition, right? So, unfortunately, I think most organizations teach young leaders as people are coming up, becoming first-line supervisors, things of that nature, we're almost taught to catch people doing things wrong, right? You're looking for problems all the time. And then as you continue to sort of ascend through the ranks, those bad behaviors tend to carry with you. And we spend more time trying to find people doing the wrong things as opposed to finding people doing the right things. You know, we've all heard of that 90-10 rule. We spend 90% of our time dealing with 10% of the people, and those 10% are typically our problem people. We shouldn't do that, right? So I make it a point to really, truly try to focus on recognizing people who are doing good things. I overtly seek out who's doing something right today that I might be able to call and just say thank you, hey, great job with that, or send a short email. Again, it doesn't cost me a dime, but it's just to recognize that contribution. The other piece I'll sort of add to that is recognize the generational changes that we're living in. What do I mean by that? People often call this younger generation our millennial generation and the Gen Zs that came after them. We call them, you know, the trophy generation. And, you know, that can be insulting to some people, but it's a reality, right? They've grown up all through school playing sports where everyone got a trophy just for showing up, even if they weren't very good, right? We have people, kids suck, right? They never even get to see the field, but they still get a trophy. You have to recognize that these people are now becoming adults. And you can't just dismiss this behavior or this expectation that has been ingrained in them all coming up through grade school and high school and in college. These are young people who are seeking validation. They're seeking recognition. They need to be told you're doing a good job on a regular basis to keep them motivated. If not, they will vote with their feet and they'll leave. And these are probably good people. They may not even realize their potential yet. They just need to be molded and coached and mentored, and they can be great contributors to our different organizations' success. But we have to recognize them. We have to see them for who they are, appreciate their contributions, and we have to get past this sort of view that, you know, most of us grew up thinking our recognition is our paycheck, right? We get paid every 2 weeks, and that's all the recognition I need. But we have to recognize that we're generations are changing, society's changing, and we need to adjust to that.
And by the way, with that, performance is changing as well, right? For some of us who've been around for a long time, the notion of performance as something you set out and you do it versus the world today is different. The digital world is different. The generations are different. Performance itself is having to have more elasticity, more adaptability. Like, that those things are characteristics of good performance, being able to respond to that. I have two other things to say, and I'm so happy to hear that you talked about responsiveness. I mean, anyone can tell you, I think you've seen yourself. I mean, I darn near sleep with my stupid phone. But, you know, if you don't hear back from me within the hour or maybe two, you can pretty much assume something bad has happened to me. And if not, by the end of the day, I go through every email I have gotten that day just to make sure I don't miss one. Exactly as you said, because I'm very conscious. People's lives are waiting on my life to find time for them. And but the second thing I want to say is, if you wouldn't mind, the next time I write to you, could you just slow down on your response, because I happen to be a huge Ruth's Chris fan, and nobody's bought me any Ruth's Chris dinners lately, and I would really like that. So especially if you're over in Crystal City, I know exactly where to find it. So I'd like you to slow your roll on responding to me next time.
You got it.
One last thing I should say, and I don't normally sort of insert this, but you've really made me think about this. You know, this catching others in the act of being themselves, catching others in the act of great things. I think most of you who received an invitation to this cafe, or if you're familiar with the Leader Development Program or the Leader Development site, know that we have an incredibly powerful opportunity that we've launched called Caught You Leading, Keep It Up, Leadergrams. Anyone in this department can send one to anyone in this department, and you get to reinforce that someone's doing something well. And by calling that to and there's no rules, there's no approvals needed, there's also no money attached, but it is a way of affirming, and it's our goal to increase that culture of sort of appreciative inquiry, catching people in the act of doing things well so that we reinforce and they do more of them so that they know it makes a difference. So, and I think I see that someone's sharing that, and we can certainly post that again, but we love seeing those leadergrams pour in. Over 4,000 have been sent to date by employees all over the department. So just throwing that out there because it's a simple and easy tool. Now, Let's talk about you for a second, Martin. As you've implied that perhaps you weren't always the genius that you are today. Was there a time in your career when the actions or behaviors of someone else, a leader, actually turned around or inspired your performance beyond the rating sheet? What can you tell us about that?
So this one is there might be some people on here who have heard this story before. If you ever heard me talk about the sort of these pivotal moments that I've experienced in my career. So you have to understand the context here, and hopefully you know football, right? So there's two football players, very, very famous football players, Terrell Owens and Jerry Rice. So I walked into my boss's office one day, and I wasn't feeling really, really good about something that had happened. Full disclosure, I had been passed up for promotion. I felt like I should have had the opportunity. My boss, who I was passed over for, called me in to kind of sense the tension and kind of said, "What's going on? It's a free space. Tell me what's going on." And I basically told him, I said, "I think I should have got this job and you shouldn't have." I said, if I'm being honest with you, I think I'm a higher performer. I think, I've got better results, and I've been here. I was sitting in a deputy for a little while, and I really think I should have gotten the opportunity. I said, and worse than that, I said, not just getting it, I'd at least like to know why. Tell me I didn't do well on an interview. Tell me something that didn't go right. And he said, you really want the truth? He said, you really want me to be honest with you? I said, I do. He said, and I'm free. He said, just like I gave you free space to be honest, can I have my free space to be honest as well? I said, sure. He said, Martin, you're Terrell Owens and I'm Jerry Rice. I said, what do you mean? He said, think about the context of Terrell Owens and Jerry Rice when they were playing together. All right? Terrell Owens was like a rookie, second season. Jerry Rice was on the tail end of his career, kind of older. He had slowed down, wasn't half the receiver that he once was. But yet, people still wanted to play with Jerry Rice. Not Terrell Owens, who was this young stud, fast, could catch any ball, great football player, but nobody wanted him as a teammate. Terrell Owens was a jerk, right? Terrell Owens was confrontational. When Terrell Owens' quarterback didn't throw him the ball, Terrell Owens yelled at his quarterback. He went over on the sideline and he yelled at his coaches all the time. And it diminished his effect. It's kind of like what I talked about earlier, that attitude and aptitude, right? I was one of those people who had the aptitude, but I didn't have the attitude. And I was sitting as an SES, as a senior executive, fighting my headquarters all the time, getting on national conference calls, asking provocative questions, knowing that, I knew all the answers, just trying to embarrass people, being confrontational, being arrogant, extremely arrogant, knowing that I was right. So I had this power, if you will, that I could wield and just, control the conversation. And over time, I had really developed this sort of sour relationship with headquarters, with my regional leadership. There were many people who had started to just not want to work with me and not want to be around me. And this person was Keith Jeffries as well, who I mentioned earlier, the fact that he took the time to be honest with me was such a pivotal moment in my career as well as in my life as a person. I got home and I told my wife what happened, and she's like, I wish he would have told you that 10 years ago, because you are quite the jerk. You're a jerk with the kids, you're a jerk with your family members, you're a jerk with me. And it really just kind of gave me that moment to just start to reflect. Is this really the man I want to be? Is this the human I want to be? Is this the leader I want to be? Is this the coworker I want to be? Is this the father, the husband? Sort of all facets of my life. Who wants to be known as a jerk? And certainly I didn't want to wear that badge with pride, right? I had to figure out ways to change that perception, and it really required me to work on me, right? I had to choose to volunteer to go and take headquarters assignments on details and things of that nature, just to demonstrate to people that, I'm really not that bad of a person, but also to change me, right? I could no longer sit there and just speak negatively about my agency's leaders. I couldn't talk about them being headquarters, right? And now I'm headquarters, right? One of the reasons why I took this job was to really, truly understand that I had a duty and a responsibility, instead of sitting on the sidelines talking about what they're doing at headquarters, to be able to jump in the game and contribute and maybe make an impact and a difference on the national level, which is why I took this job. My hope is my coworkers, my peers, and my family, my wife, my children, my friends have seen a difference in me, to be somebody who's a little bit more caring, a little bit more patient, a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more passionate and compassionate. And only time will tell, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. We have to continue to work on ourselves and become better. But I sincerely appreciate my leader for being the first person in my career to call me a jerk in the most diplomatic and responsible way possible, to get me to understand how I was perceived by others and the opportunity that I had to shape those perceptions and get different results.
I love that story, and I can see that many others love it as well.
Some of them probably are writing, yeah, he was a jerk.
I'm looking. I don't see those yet, but, credit goes to Keith, absolutely. But I will also say, credit goes to you because you weren't so much of a jerk that you were unwilling to hear some truth. And there's maturity there, right? And so if someone was willing to take a chance on trusting that you were mature enough to hear it, you were willing to take a chance on being mature enough to hear it. And, I often say to people when I have to tell them tough things or make difficult decisions, I'll say, and I use the word love because I love people, but I say I would love you less well if I allowed you to serve yourself so poorly. Like, and I'll say to my team, I'll say to Tiffany all the time, like, don't let me not know. If you care about me, you'll tell me what I need to know before the world tells me. Because trust me, everyone is watching and knows things about you that you think that they don't know. And so, again, I think it's a fantastic mark that you were open to sharing it. And, it kind of leads us into this topic. And I see in the questions, there's some questions that were raised along these lines. The fact of the matter is, not everyone is that mature, or not everyone's that enlightened or willing or knows what to do about it. And, we have accountability and responsibility to lead our own performance, right? We get paid to do the work that the department wants us to do. Your supervisor or organization is supposed to do a lot to create the conditions for your success. And very often as supervisors, we do a lot. And I can do everything for you. I can create every condition that is within my hands, but I can't actually perform for you. And if, by the way, if I'm spending my time performing for you, we have a much bigger problem, and you are not going to be the high performer, considered the high performer that you think you are. Yet all of us are delusional sometimes, right? We all have moments and spaces where we have blind spots. If you could hold up a mirror to people who do not appear to be taking responsibility for their own inspired performance, what kind of things do you think, if they were willing to look in that mirror, what kind of things do you think they would see in that mirror most often? And, what would you tell them to do about it? I'll give you an example. One of my pet peeves is someone, we've got holy heck raining down on us, 700 new things a day. I can't even barely, get to the first 1,200 things. It is what it is. And someone says to me, yeah, that's not on my performance plan. Will you be taking something off? No, I will not be taking something off. Are you kidding me? No, we don't get to pick. Performance plans are a guide that are written at the beginning of the year. They're like your GPS. They are not your contract with the department. Your contract with the department is to perform. And so, that's one of those things. And then alternatively, I would ask you, what would those who do take responsibility for their own inspired performance, what do you think they would see in the mirror? And what would you say to them?
So I think starting with those who are sort of not demonstrating an inspired performance. If you've ever found yourself saying something like that's above my pay grade, or they don't pay me enough to do that, we hear those comments made by people. What I will tell you is you're missing a huge opportunity, right? I don't think people realize sort of doing your job is not enough. Doing your job truly is what you get paid for every 2 weeks. That's not going to get you promoted. That's not going to get you recognized. That's not going to get you identified as someone who we need to put on sort of that succession plan in order to be a future leader in this organization. I think people have to recognize that every day that they're at work it's an audition. It's an audition for that next opportunity, that next promotion, right? We need the advocacy of others in order to attain success in our careers. And if you're one of those types of people who just does your job, you might meet expectations. You're doing your job. I tell my folks all the time, if you're not making an impact outside of your area of responsibility, if you're not contributing to sort of national success, if you're not actively engaged on, committees and work groups and things that are sort of driving our organization forward, you're not exceeding my expectations. You're certainly not achieving excellence, right? Those categories are reserved for those people who are doing a great job at their job, but also contributing to do something more. So I think for those who are not sort of demonstrating that inspired performance, the mirror's probably going to tell them, you're in your own way. You're missing a great opportunity here. You have an opportunity to step up. Take something off your boss's plate. I'm one of those people, I'm constantly asking, what else do you need from me? What else can I do for you? And if I see a void, I'd like to just step in most of the time. I don't even ask or seek approval, right? I know that my boss trusts me enough and has enough confidence in me that if I step in, she's not going to be offended or think that I'm trying to show her up. I'm literally trying to make her life easier, and she's demonstrated and told me how much she appreciates that. So I think people have to recognize that you can't just perform at your level. You can't say things like that's above my pay grade. You have to step in and take advantage of those opportunities. What would they say for those people who are doing well? What would the mirror say? I think for me, it would say, great job. It would say, you're the future. It would say, you're highly engaged, you're enthusiastic. It's obvious that you're passionate about your work, and you're the future of your organization. Keep smiling. Keep looking at yourself. Keep doing great things, and let the sort of success of your career be your fulfillment as you move forward.
So, Martin, we only have about 2 minutes left, so we're not going to have an opportunity for questions, but I suspect that as much as people would have liked to ask you questions, they would have agreed with me that it was just better to have the time to, keep hearing the things you wanted to share. And, I want to conclude this by asking you one very important question before I close this out, and that is, because even grown-up senior leaders who are as awesome as you are people too. And so I want to follow my own little simple rule and ask you, Martin, if I were to have asked you at the end of your workday, today or yesterday if you prefer, and asked you, what mattered to you today, Martin, what would you tell me?
Before I answer that, Lena, I want to say thank you. I'm honored that you would even consider me for your series. You are doing yeoman's work in your efforts to try to make our organization better and providing these opportunities for people to grow, hear different perspectives. I've gotten to work with you on other things in the past. You're one of those true gems in our department, and I thank you for being here and the work that you do, and also for the privilege to sit and talk with you today. What matters to me is the same thing that matters literally every single day, and it is one thing and one thing only. It's our people. I am one who truly believes that if you take care of our people, they will take care of our mission. We have a very challenging environment that we're in today. Our country has been battling this pandemic now for, almost 2 years. People don't realize that. It's called COVID-19 for a reason, because it started in 2019. We are in the third or fourth quarter of 2021, almost 2 years into this pandemic. We still have a country that is largely stressed by just the social unrest and the changes that we all know are so desperately needed to bring about more equality in our society. more inclusivity, things of that nature. And I think we have to always be cognizant of how these things impact our people, right? It's not just the mission or the duties that they need to carry out every single day, but how are they impacted by, the fears and the stresses and the anxieties of this COVID, this pandemic and other things that are sort of these distractions in their lives? Are we demonstrating the empathy and the compassion and the support for them and helping them get through not just the work challenges, but also those personal challenges? So I say, we can't not accomplish our mission without our people. So if you start your day and end your day with that focus as a leader, am I putting my people first? Am I demonstrating caring and compassion? Have I done all that I can? Have I met all the asks? Am I doing everything that I can to advocate and support? At the end of the day, if we take care of our people, I have no doubt they will take care of our mission, and we will find success both at TSA as well as across our department.
You could not be more right, Martin. I mean, ultimately, leaders are not here to lead furniture and budget and IT, right, and make decisions about memos. Leaders are here to lead people. So it's got to start and end with that. And to that end, what an exciting, amazing way to end this year and this cafe. I am so grateful to you. We've had the opportunity to work together before, but having this personal chance to chat with you, I just can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've shared and why you've shared it at this last cafe for the year. And with that said, I need to take a second to thank especially my team who makes this series possible, and does everything that you just talked about. I have no doubt that that's exactly what they see when they look in the mirror. Tiffany Carter, who has led this series, not just this year, but last year, we worked very closely together on this, and she is magnificent. And I want to thank you, Tiffany, for being such an inspired performer in the service of these cafes and so many other things. And I know that I also have on this call one of my other superstar performers, Patricia Henriquez, and in fact, both of them partner on one of our biggest projects. I just wanted to, at the end of this cafe year, I want to say thank you so much to them for what they do and their inspired performance, so that we can bring this to the stage and connect with folks out there. And with that said, we're so delighted that you all came, and we hope that this is an opportunity to really lift your eyes up off the page and model the reality that performance is not about the rating. It's about the results, and it's about the inspiration. And so with that, I want to wish everybody a happy end of fiscal year. May the new fiscal year bring something that makes some more sense in our lives. And if you've known me or been to any of my events, you know how I end these things, and it is always the same way. And so here we will share with you the wisdom of a man who has unarguably influenced my life, other than Martin Elam. And that is none other than the immortal, who are my 70s and 80s babies out there. If you know this, you're going to say it with me, because that man was Casey Kasem, and he said, until we meet again, who's out there saying it with me? Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. All right, folks, and that is a wrap.